Hello everyone, welcome to Boston Post-Mortem.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our panel on GDC 2026. We put together a panel of people from kind of all different backgrounds who went to GDC this year. And we wanted to explore what it was, why you should or shouldn't go, and just kind of post-mortem that for this year. First question is going to go to the audience though. By show of hands, who has been to GDC? Okay, so almost everyone. Good, you know kind of what we're talking about. All right, let's start with introductions. I'm going to give it to our remote folks first. I'm going to start with the wisest among us, and that's
Connor. Hello, I'm Ichiro. I know a lot of you. I have not had the pleasure of meeting all of you. I have been in the industry for about 30 years. I founded a couple of companies. First one became Sony Online Denver. Second one, Dejavon Games, is one of the longest running indie studios in the known universe, if not the unknown universe. In 2018, I did a stint over moonlighting at Valve to help establish something called Steam Labs and improve game discovery. And most recently, I have a funded startup called Totally Human Media. We have a platform called WeLoveIt.io, and my goal is to solve discovery for all game developers and all people who love games.
all right. Connor, how about you?
Hi everyone, my name is Connor. I'm a solo dev based in Boston. My background was actually originally outside of games, so in like public health, international studies, before transitioning into narrative design in Denmark. So I got my first role as a narrative designer, worked with some indie games there. And it's graduating university, undergraduate. I've worked as a technical artist in and out of games. And so currently I'm working as a solo developer for a project and working at an aerospace startup. And right now the reason I couldn't be there is I'm in Nebraska and my first residency, so a fellowship. So I work also on maybe the artsy side of games. And my role here, I guess, in GDC this year was helping curate and developing a partnership with GDC and Informa.
Awesome. All right, let's go in studio here. I'll start with Jillian.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jillian Smith. I am a professor at WPI, and I am the program director for interactive media and game development there. And for GDC, I am what used to be called a summit advisor for the Educators Summit. I'm still involved in the organization and sort of acceptance of talks at GDC, but typically for education-focused material.
Hi everyone, I'm Greg Kinnaman, local former Boston, Indiana. These days I work a lot in AAA and primary development as an engineering manager, but people also know me in the indie scene from having made a bunch of games for really old hardware like the Atari 2600 and the Game Boy Color. I've gone to GDC about 12 times over the last 15, 16 years, so I've been a lot, I've seen it change a lot, and I'm hoping I can share some wisdom from that.
My name is Alex. I'm a professional social butterfly at these events. Been to most events in the area. Most of the time I work on the management side of games right now. So I'm the VP of product currently, and previously have been co-founder of game studios, worked in the tech industry. And for GDC, it is very much a platform to go to other events. So I go to GDC occasionally. I'm here to talk about all the other stuff that happens around GDC, as well as comparisons to other events like DICE and GameSpeed, DevCon, PAX, and things like that.
And I am Chad. I've been in games for 19 years. I've worked at companies such as BioWare and Zynga. I've done my own indie thing for 10 years. I've done consulting for games you might like and might not like Battle Block Theater or Mighty No. 9. Now I am the engineering manager at SkyMap. We're a small-ish 70-person company, and we're mostly co-development as well. I've been on and off visiting GDC since about 2009, and I think most people here have been at least twice. So I think there's a very wide wide range of perspectives here, from people who have been more frequently, people who are just starting out, people who are going for different reasons. So what I really want to do here today is explore all the various vectors of going to GDC, what makes it worth it, tips, tricks, that kind of thing. So as a light question first, what I'd like to ask folks, if you went to the show this year, if you went to the expo hall, there's a really cool thing called alt control games. It hasn't always been a thing, but recently it's felt like it's kind of taken over the floor as newer and cooler and more experimental things come. I want to know what your favorite alt control game was this year.
Pass. I didn't make it over to that part of the expo hall. I didn't. I honestly, I had 2 hours to myself at GDC this year, so I did not make it to that part of the expo hall. So I'm gonna have to pass, unfortunately.
So I used
Do
to
you want trivia? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you take this one.
Well, it's a real quick thing. Did you know Alt Control GDC was originated by Bostonian Sean Polson?
I did not know that.
That's all.
Very cool.
All over to Greg.
So I used to work in harmonics on rhythm games, and I love rhythm games. And there was a game about using a katana that you pulled out of its sheath in time to make sushi out of fish jumping out of the water, and that was like really fun.
Alt Control is one of the reasons I go to GDC. We had a game in Alt Control GDC many years ago, and I like keeping them going back even though I don't really do Alt Control games anymore. I think my favorite was the big hamster ball one, where you had to like climb into a human-sized hamster ball, like an inflatable one, and it was mounted on rollers, and you had to like run in the hamster ball, and I don't even remember what the gameplay was, honestly. I just remember running in a hamster ball and feeling really dizzy, and it was awesome.
Connor, did you get a chance to make it out of your booth?
Yeah, no, I agree. The hamster ball. There's also like a toothbrush one where you hold like a big toothbrush and like scrub it between teeth. But I think that hamster ball was pretty fun and pretty fun to watch people fall and just kind of go in circles. I think the gameplay was actually like you have to like it was like a speed run. You had to like you're this ball and had to like go through this path. But I almost played it, but yeah, no, it was but it was fun to watch and yeah.
When you say you almost played it, was it too popular?
Yeah, it was too popular. Like every time I wanted to play, it was just like I don't know. The line.
It was
like,
Jillian. She just kept going in and running.
No, I get too motion sick to do that. Absolutely not.
Yeah, it was so long. Like at least 20 minutes every time.
So Connor, I actually did want to ask you first. This is the first year that Boston Game Dev has had a booth there. What was the process like for you for that?
Yeah, so I think the process originated actually with Chris Mayer submitting, kind of starting the relationship with Informa, submitting an application, and then right after that, the two of us ended up continuing the conversation with Informa, and we're really talking about like the needs for each organization, and over the course of several months, I think. I'm forgetting like when we first started. I want to say like October, November, but kind of within early in the year, we really got to work with kind of the documents. More specifically, social media requirements, basically technical, kind of like posting things. It really to build like a mutual kind of exchange of kind of like sharing what Informa does and what GDC has offered to game devs, and then in exchange, we receive passes for staff and then for indie teams. So I can talk more in specifics, but basically we had an assortment of passes that we gave to our community after kind of a curation process and a Google form and to kind of learn about the games that were around Boston and that were presentable, and also just a variety of themes to kind of showcase the best and the variety Boston has to offer.
It seemed like a lot of work from the sidelines, even just seeing messages. would you say that it was a valuable endeavor? Like, what did you get out of it?
Certainly, 100% valuable. I think the hardest part was setting up the relationship, because this is the first time GDC has done something like this with community organizations, or just in creating this demo space. So that there were a lot of unknowns on GDC side, I think, and then for us, just kind of having a conversation about what our needs are. So I think the hardest part is mostly the setup. So totally would do it again. I think it was so great. Like the members in the audience, if you're there, like some of our members, like Manny, Nolan, who got there, made some great relationships with other devs, other possibly producers. So I think certainly I'd love to do it again. And I think the hard part is maybe in behind this, hopefully, just because like the space, we've done it before, and we also have like the media and the structure there.
Nice. I feel like the show floor often kind of represents what the game industry is going through at the current time. Like, you know, VR was very big at one point. Mocap was really huge at one point. We see all these trends. I'm curious, Greg, based on what you saw on the show floor, what were kind of the popular trends that you're seeing in the industry right now?
So I think the number one thing that people commented on was how a lot of the largest players were absent. So Sony, Unreal, they've all started having their own conferences. They realized that they don't need to pay GDC to have a giant megaphone and pay a cut. They can just host their own. And so what changed there, I think, is that in their absence, there was a lot more exposure for both the middleware developers there, as well as some of the smaller game studios. And there's always a lot of countries that are presenting their sort of the games from their countries. And I think there was just I think it was a much more valuable experience to be an exhibitor there this year, because you had so much more reach. You weren't sort of pushed to the edges of these big pavilions. But I think it also speaks to how the biggest players in the industry feel about their presence at GDC and whether it's valuable to them.
Anything to add, Jen?
So I totally agree with Greg. What's interesting to me though is that those big players did have presence at GDC, they just had presence outside of the show floor. So like Epic ran an entire thing for educators on like how to use Unreal just in a hotel like a block away from Moscone. And so they still had a huge networking event and a way to connect. It's interesting to see how GDC has evolved from like the show floor as the one place that everyone must be to lots of satellite events as well.
I think I got a little bit. I spent a lot of time at Exola's space where they rented like a block away. So it became the thing this year was like, if you had money, why go on the show floor when you could rent a building? And that tended to be the main thing. So like Unreal was in like a club that's underground that I've been to before for dinners and everything, and they just bought the whole place for like 5 days. You know, Exola was like, we own this building. They actually ended up like theming the front. They had like the right one was for the normies and the left one was for like, oh, we think you're actually really important. So obviously you go in the right one for the normies, and you're like, I don't have any money, so I'm just here for the free food. But the show floor, they really did like dump all their money into a separate area over there, and that separate area was where a lot of the networking was going on. And I think it was the hotel lobbies was the big one that I saw. They were like, this hotel is our hotel, which is very interesting. But definitely not on the show floor.
That's interesting. So you mean, as opposed to years previous where it's kind of like everyone just kind of gathers in the Marriott or the Intercontinental, the lobbies, that companies actually like kind of took over specific lobbies?
Yeah, not the big ones. So if you go to GDC, right, if you guys have been there, there's like 3 lobbies that you're gonna cycle through. It's like the W, you know, the Marriott, the other Marriott, the Hyatt, and then there's a couple others that people go through. And so you go in like the big Marriott, you try to find a place to sit down, and it's impossible, but you know, that's the classic GDC experience. But there are other ones around there that they were taking over. I know Sensor Tower took over the one that was next to the Indian restaurant, or has an Indian restaurant in it. I forget the name of that hotel. And then the buildings, the commercial buildings were also taken over. So like restaurants were taken over. So fair amount of that. I imagine it's cheaper than a booth at GDC.
And bigger.
And bigger, right. And there was lots of spaces that you could like set in individual meeting rooms. They like put a couple things in there, and so you could like sit at a table over there. It came with catering and everything else built in, so you could eat throughout the day. So that was it was very interesting, and of course it creates a very exclusionary environment. If you don't know those things are there, it's very hard to get invited. So that was one thing I don't really enjoy, is that if you're not part of the Cool Kids Club, you don't even know that these things are going on.
And I was part of that group. I did not know these things were going on, except for one time where I met someone in the lobby and it was like, wow, there's a lot of people here.
That actually, I kind of wanted to touch on that at one point, but that brings me to something that I feel like is interesting about GDC, is that if you have a mentor who knows where to go and where to be, you'll end up having a little bit better of a time. Have you had that experience where someone's taken you under their wing during your early GDCs and kind of showed you where to go?
Can I talk on that one in
Go for it.
particular? Because I feel like Boston does a really great job of being that mentor to anybody who's willing to listen, and maybe, even if you don't. We do a bunch of stuff here in Boston. We have Discord around going to GDC. We have a channel that pops up on the Boston Slack. So if you're part of the Boston Slack, you can go there. Bostonians tend to find each other at the airports. They tend to tell each other where they're going. They follow Alex to whatever mezcal bar he's going to next. And I do think a mentor is good. I'm sure my co-panelists will come up with excellent examples of those. But if you're in Boston, and if you're in this room, and even if you're not in this room, as Connor and I aren't, you have already this network built in. We can talk more about that a little bit later, but that's kind of like, welcome to Boston, you get your community.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think join Itera's GDC Discord server. That is like the best way to find out what's going on. I also, my very first GDC, I was there as an IGDA fellow. I was a student at the time, and I don't know if there's students in the audience here, but I very, 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 very strongly encourage you to apply for that. It's fantastic. And I know there's a lot of other fellowship opportunities as well for like students and junior devs. That they assign you a mentor, and you kind of have like a built-in cohort that you can go around with. So,
one thing I found there that that worked out really well for me is I actually met some people who were there for their first GDCs, and a lot of them had questions like the ones we're getting here, and I was able to answer those, and those ended up being the people who I kept in touch with on LinkedIn after the conference, which ultimately is one of the goals of networking, right? It's not just to get a business card, it's to make a connection. So there's also an opportunity for the experienced folks going to make new connections that way.
Actually, I would love to explore that element further, because I know there's a lot of people who go with a goal. They go with, I'm going to try to talk to these people, I'm going to try to do that. What are some of the things that you recommend to be networking at GDC? What are some of your networking tips?
So I've been doing this, answering this question a lot, I think, especially pre-GDC this year. I do a lot of mentoring of people that are younger in the industry. I haven't been in the industry as long as Ichiro, but I've been 20 plus years now in the industry. And one of the things I say is a genuine excitement. Everyone wants to be excited about what you're working on. We're all there for at least one reason, which is to be excited about making games. No one wants to go there and be like, hey, what do? That's great. Do you have any open positions? Which I see way too often, and at this GDC that was very, very common. So a lot of times I would take people under my wing and say, you are here to make a genuine connection, and you are seeding relationships that will, that you will make with these people. You'll see them again, and then 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, you are going to be talking to them, and they're going to say, like, oh, I really enjoy you, and I enjoy our conversations. It would be great to work together someday. And that someday is going to be someday. And most of those never happen, right? Most of those days never happen. But you are not going to go there to just get a job. I think that's one of those things that people go, they're like, if I go to GDC, it's like a video game. I need to complete this quest, and the reward is that I get a job. And it's like, no, the whole point here is actually just be exciting, be engaged. And one of the questions that I tell them to do when you go to GDC is ask them what they're excited about, what they're working on right now. Like, what are you working on right now? What's got you excited about it? Get them talking about each other, and then you can talk about what makes you excited, and you make that genuine connection. And don't be afraid to just like grab 30 minutes or an hour, because I think the FOMO sets in, and it's like, no, let's go sit down, let's go have dinner together, let's go get coffee together, let's go get like a pastry, and then do that repeatedly. That's a successful GDC, even if all you do is like meet 20 people, you hang out, you go sing karaoke, and you drink coffee in the morning. That's like a successful conference, you know.
Can I piggyback on that? You talk about going together to karaoke. Here is a concrete thing that you can do to short circuit all of the, you know, like the weird business of trying to network and trying to work your way up and so forth and so on. Form communities. That is my number one tip. So you go to GDC and you go on the Discord or Slack or you know what have you, and if you have a particular interesting topic that you are, you know, you don't even have to be an expert in it, but you have to be interested in it, and you have to have something interesting to say, and you talk to like-minded people, and a handful of you will get to talk about, I don't know, you know, frogs and frogmageddons in video games or something very specific. And if it's interesting and if it's wide enough, groups will form around you. So you can go out there and you can be like, you know, I'm really interested in artificial life. And then you start talking to people, and then suddenly on Wednesday at 2 p.m. in Yerba Buena, you will have 20 people interested in talking about artificial life. And then that is your network right there.
Can I hop on that? There's an event, it's an unconference that happens in Yerba Buena called Lost Levels, and much like Game Loop, which is coming up, it's a chance for you to potentially talk about something you know a lot about, and it's a chance for you to meet other people who are interested in other really cool topics. It's a great icebreaker. So that's one of the things I tell people is if you want to make connections, yeah, find something interesting to talk about with people and be in the places where those conversations are happening.
Did you attend Lost Levels this year?
I think briefly.
What was one of the most interesting?
Go do the
That
thing.
is
I didn't do the
most lost
thing.
levels ever.
Sorry, I'm gonna need the question again.
What was one of the most interesting topics that you heard about?
I'm gonna draw a blank on this one. I did not prepare for this question.
Well,
You know, you can make something up and like, who's gonna say no?
I didn't know. Yeah, you never would have
The
known.
Lost Levels police.
I mean, I think there's been talks on like which Final Fantasy is the best, which is a great way to get a lot of people upset and passionate about things. That's one of the ones I
Start
definitely remember. There's always like a sing-along. Someone always brings like a ukulele or a guitar, and that becomes a cool thing.
So one of the things that was interesting about this year's GDC is that it was branded as like a rebirth of GDC. It's the Festival of Gaming. It's different than before. Was there anything that the conference did itself that was noticeably different, that really felt like this was different and maybe it was or was not successful?
So I got to experience the rebrand of GDC from Summit Advisor to attendee, and I think it was like 75% different from prior experience. The focus seemed to be, at the event, the focus seemed to be a lot more around community and networking. I'd never seen roundtables that packed. Like, I moderated 3 of them, and they were full with lines out the door, and trying to get into roundtables that I was interested in was like genuinely hard, which I hadn't had that experience before. The talks felt different, the space felt different, and from an organizer perspective, it was confusing, but also different. I think they're really trying to reorient away from sort of siloed talk experiences to community development and mentorship. And they're also trying to grab some of the evening time for like evening social events much more, in part to try to combat the like, if you know about the hotel party then you're cool. In part, honestly, I think for safety and liability reasons. Like, there's been some real problems at like after hours events, and they probably don't want to be responsible for that. But I really think a lot of it is just trying to get a broader segment of community together as well, and remain financially viable, I think.
I'll let you go first and then I'll follow.
It was much younger. I think the energy was different. I think it was very exciting. I love when people come in with no idea of what they could do, like they don't know what the limitations are, and they get really excited about that. So I think the energy, it was so much more energetic, and partly it was the breaking of that silo, but partly also because I ran into so many people who were like, holy shit, I'm here. I finally made it. I'm at GDC. I did it. You know, and I was like, that's awesome. It's your first GDC. And the number of people that were like, oh, it's my first GDC was really exciting. That was really, it was a lot closer, I think, to PAX, where people are just really excited that you make video games versus, you know, past GDCs where it's just been much more like professional development, siloed, like you said, siloed, go to the cool kids parties and things like that. This one felt actually felt a lot more open in a way, in a good way.
One of the things I heard from people is that they've changed which talks they're accepting, and they've changed some of the programming. So for example, I went to like an 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. Like icebreaker theater game thing that was like, you're gonna network with people all day, why don't we warm up those muscles? And they said like, that's not a talk they'd ever had in the past. I also heard that there was a real focus on positive and optimistic talks, and that we filtered for that, which I think changed the mood. And then the final thing is that they, and this might be jumping ahead in our questions, is that they got rid of a lot of the different passes. So there used to be like an indie pass, an audio pass, there used to just be expo passes. They basically made it, there's like 1 and 2 passes, and like one is come to the conference and one is come to the conference and get the ball, basically. And
oh, the student one. There's like a super cheap, like
There's like a cheaper student indie pass that they opened late. Like it was, and I think that's part of why it was younger, is there were a lot more students there this year than I'd seen before.
sorry, I wanted to just
sorry.
And so one of the things that happened for me is that as someone who hadn't gone to a lot of talks for a long time and had only gone to like the indie or the advocacy talks, I suddenly was able to go to all the big talks. And as people said, a lot of the talks were packed, and I think it's because suddenly we had fewer divides. It wasn't like, oh, I can't go to that because I don't have a Summits pass for Tuesday. I suddenly could go to any talk I wanted, and that was really, really, allowed me to connect with a lot of people I wouldn't have otherwise.
I think to add on, like inside baseball stuff, I think they gave away like 5 to 10% of their passes this year.
Yep.
So like Amir was like, I have 600 free passes to give out. And even like Boston Game Dev was like, in the past we've gotten 3 or 4 free passes. It was like, we have several dozen now. So there's a lot of people, I think, to combat the like, GDC is a $2,000 ticket and hotel and flights. It was now like, well, if you can get your butt here, you have a good chance of getting in for free.
You were talking about the difference of the talks. I feel like in the past, kind of the bigger draws are, we made this successful game and here's some topic about it. Was there still excitement for that kind of talk of like, oh, I really want to know how Blueprints did whatever?
Didn't like Expedition 33, I think it was like a talk on like Expedition 33 audio, and they had like lines out the door. And it was just like, holy shit, Expedition 33 is amazing. And I was like, for the audio talk? Okay, that's cool, but like, it's not like it's, I remember there only being like big talks for like Rob Pardo, and he was chatting in the past, or like, you know, Will Wright comes out of hiding for like once every 10 years and gives a talk, and people are like, no, Will! And so like, that's always very exciting. So, but yeah, I heard that like some of the big names, they were just like, I want to learn anything about this game that was killer and like teach me. And I thought that was, I think the big names, if anything, drew even more crowds this year. I don't know, Shiro and Connor, if you guys experienced that, did you go to any talks that you were like, big name, mega maxi output?
Well, I'm a small name, and I gave a talk, and I think that, is it because there were younger folks, you know, more junior folks, because they're, you know, the passes were more democratically available, but like, and others that gave talks have noted this, like, my talk was packed. And arguably, do I have something important to say? I don't know, maybe or maybe not, but like everybody's talks were packed and there were really enthusiastic people, and I haven't seen that, like I haven't seen the enthusiasm in like 2, 3, 4 years. So I like Mark, Delora, and the, you know, everybody must be doing something right. And also the industry was kind of a little bit on an upswing in certain ways. We'll see what happens next year.
Yeah, I feel like there's like the cynical old GDC goer who's like, the talks are not worth it. I'm here to talk to pubs, talk to whoever. So it is kind of exciting to hear that, there's a fervor for it again. So I wanted to shift gears and talk about, when we talked about this, we talked about like the idea, like, is it worth it to go to GDC? And I don't think anyone on the panel would say, no, it's not worth it. I think we all have just a different idea of what worth it means. And so what I wanted to do was explore what worth it is, what's successful for each of our panelists, because everyone's looking for something different, right? And so like Jillian, as an educator, what is a successful GDC for you?
Oh, that's a good question. So GDC is the only event in the world that I can go to where I can see my fellow educators at other universities who we don't go to the same academic conferences for whatever reason, and like meet someone in the Screen Actors Guild and talk to someone in marketing. So to me, as an educator, it's worth it to be able to connect with other educators, right? There's a huge number of educators who go to the Educators Summit every year. K-12 through like advanced degree granting institutions and everything in between. I do sometimes go for the talks because it's really easy for me to get out of touch with what the latest thing is that people are doing as an educator. I'm not like a day in, day out practicing game dev, and so I like going to the talks for that. I'm not one of those people who like sets a goal that I'm gonna meet 20 new people or whatever. Like I just kind of like go and see where the vibes take me.
And in terms of this year, was there anything new or interesting in, like you said, there was a summit and...
So Educators Summit has always existed, and it used to be a single day. It was always Tuesday, and everyone just sort of like set their calendar by it. All the educators are going to show up on Tuesday, and that's where they're going to be come hell or high water. This last year, GDC completely got rid of the summit system, but kept some of the summit advisors around to do programming across the week. And the Educators Summit reoriented to have programming every single day. And so that was a huge shift for us. This coming year, what's the date today, like the 15th, the 14th? In 3 days, I am going to find out how summits will work, apparently. They told us that they would email us by the 17th and how it'll work. But it sounds like they're going to be changing it up a little bit again. But yeah, like there was more integrated stuff across the week for us, which meant more opportunities to be able to do non-educator things on particular days. I got to hang out in the UX Summit some, and I moderated a roundtable there, and it was fun, so yeah.
Did it give you more touch points with other educators because you see them more often, or?
No, not really. Maybe with more kinds of educators, because like I could go to the K-12 focused stuff, which I wouldn't normally be able to do, and I like connecting with my K-12 colleagues. That's nice. But no, if anything, it was actually like, so Catherine Isbister is faculty at UC Santa Cruz, and she and I are the summit advisors for Educators Summit, and we had to spend a lot of time figuring out how we were going to have touch points each day for educators so we didn't lose each other, because we didn't have the ability anymore to just say like, show up to this room on Tuesday and sit in it all day.
Changing gears, Connor, as someone who was attending a booth, planning that, what was successful for you? Did you have any goals in mind before you set off on a plane?
That's a good question. I think my goals were to support the developers. I think I might have overpacked my schedule too, if I'm honest, a little bit during that week, but I think my goals are really to we're mostly before GDC, really get to kind of showcase the developers. So I think also to add more clarity to some of the responsibilities we had. The options, we had a series of options in partnership with GDC to deliver basically. And what I chose was to do developer interviews. And so really I went to showcase the developers and make sure their experience was seamless and that they had enough time on the floor. I think that on the Boston game dev side, that was my goal, and make sure it was seamless. But I think getting there, like the setup was the hardest part, honestly. I can also speak about other parts of my experience, but I think primarily it was to establish an ongoing presence or Boston presence at GDC. So we also had a kind of picnic outside to bring together some of the community from New England, like outside of Boston, or people who kind of have been in Boston. So my goal is really to make more of a routine there, kind of maybe build some kind of ritual. I think is important for Boston as a community, and maybe even a selfish reason, like if I ever leave Boston, it's my home, I'm kind of from Boston, like it'd be a way to connect in the future.
And do you feel fulfilled? Did you feel like you succeeded?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we did it, it's over, and I think the more important part is that we now have the infrastructure and some of the learnings from the experience to replicate, which is, I guess, all you can ask for. So now that we have some members transitioning out of the community, I think we'll be able to continue, and because that's the most we can hope for, to have like a legacy that lives longer than any one of us individually.
Nice. Sure, you've never seemed like your goal is to go and hustle publishers and chase that kind of the same thing that a lot of indies would be there chasing, to just get published, get money, get your game funded. What is your goal when you go to GDC?
Well, so I have a tech startup, which means that my goal is to make sure that I don't run out of business and I can pay my people. So absolutely, there was a funding goal there. I was talking to VCs, I was talking to angels, but outside of the pitches, like there are a couple of demo day pitches that I did in front of piles of VCs and investors and so forth and so on. The way that I found success is to do cool stuff and to talk about it and to put together groups and be interested in conversations and just do those weird kismet talks. Talk to people. So I'm not a huge fan of being one of N people, so it's like a publisher comes to GDC and you go and you pitch that publisher and you are literally one of 20 that they have that afternoon. So I'm exaggerating. You're easily forgettable. But if you talk to people about what's interesting to you, or if I talk to people about like, here's, I did this stuff on game discovery, I'm working on this stuff, take a look at this taxonomy that we're putting together, look at this knowledge graph, and sort of listen to what's interesting to the other person and what they're interested in. Eventually you'll find commonalities, not with everybody, and a certain percentage of those people will be either themselves moneyed, or they'll know people with funding, or they'll just be like, I invest in this kind of stuff. So absolutely. And my favorite story is when you go to GDC and then one GDC later or afterwards, you've talked to somebody over the year and you're telling them what you're doing, and they go to you and say, yeah, okay, I'll invest in you, and you were not asking that. So that is what just sort of being there and being interesting and interested and connecting people will do. I don't love, I know it's successful for many people, but I find it exhausting to go into hustle and to pitch.
It seems like were you expecting to make deals there, or were you just hoping to get warm contacts?
Right, never say never. You never make a deal at GDC. It's like these things take time, right? And sometimes you need to meet people a bazillion times and talk to them a bazillion times before the deal is made. This is not always true. Sometimes you go there and you get a deal, but like the people that I got my last 3 checks in from for funding were folks that I had met a year and a half prior and had just been like, let me keep you posted on what I'm doing, or let's, Blue Ocean Games is one of our investors, and we did some like thought leadership pieces together, on what, where's the industry going, and eventually they're just like, oh, you're cool, let's invest in you. So absolutely, it's okay to just know people and to get a warm contact that you reach out to again afterwards. That's an important thing, and keep the conversation going with. It's okay if the deal doesn't happen immediately.
Alex, I'm curious if you have any follow-up on that since you've been in a similar space.
Yeah, it's always very difficult. We pitched 2 or 3 years ago. We pitched to a large number of VCs. We did the whole song and dance. We pitched to 11. I fucked up one of them, which was pretty rough. Kayla looked at me and she was like, "That was really bad," and I was like, "Why?" And so you don't really know until you do it how grueling it is, because you literally screw up like one answer and you're like, "That's it. No money's coming your way." Because you sound arrogant, is my feedback. And the arrogance was, I was like, I don't know why anyone would want to use this technology, because I don't think it's very beneficial to game developers. And the guy was like, well, I just invested $11 million into that company. And I was like, internally, like, well, it's a really terrible idea. And several years later, I was borne out and vindicated. I was like, it was a terrible idea, I told you that. But like, yeah, so success for raising money there is basically like, I'm a real person, I'm not an email, I need you to come over here and pay attention to me, I'm a real boy, and like, I'm here with a company that has a real possibility of making a lot of money. Now, we didn't, because we were undercapitalized, we shut the company down, so, that shit happens. But like, if you don't make those warm introductions, like Ichiro's saying, you will never get that money in, because most funding and from a venture capital perspective is warm intros. So you gotta go in there, you get someone vouching for you, they shoot an email to their buddy, they're like, hey man, this guy's doing something really cool, you should totally go talk to them about the really cool thing that they're doing, and it's a lot better than you being like, trust me bro, I'm doing a really cool thing. And then they're like, oh wow, you go in the bin. I can't tell you how many emails we've sent out over the years. But to Ichiro's point, you go there, you're a real person, you're a real face, you talk for half an hour, you talk to an hour, you sound interesting, you sound exciting, suddenly your emails start getting replied back to. So that's success.
Not just, you mentioned VC, I just want to say, venture capitalist funding, but that works for a lot of stuff, including getting jobs. Like most of the folks that I've ended up working with, I met at GDC or in person. It's exactly like Alex says, it takes a while to do that.
And I can't stress enough, you guys go to GDC, you must follow up. The number of people I talk to that are like, I'm like, here's my contact info, you should totally follow up. I think it's like 5% of people I talk to are like, actually follow up. It's just unreal. I'm like, I'm here, I was excited, we had a great conversation, you have a perfect opportunity to follow up, talk to me, make an enduring connection. And they're like, that's awesome, I won't. And you're like, okay, that's fine. I'm guilty of this too. Like a lot of times we're like, we should totally follow up. And then I'm like, I got shit going on, man. Like I don't know anything. So that's why going to GDC multiple times is so beneficial. You see them again. Yeah, it's that guy. You do the thing. Let's talk. And then like you reconnect and you're like, oh, now I actually want to catch up. Because like not only did I have a great chance to talk to you last year, and I have another chance to talk to you this year, this is actually like an enduring connection. This person's interesting, I'm going to talk to. So for me, success this year was more fringy and frontier in the sense that I needed to know that what our product was delivering met or exceeded the frontiers of what other game studios were trying to do. I need to know that what we were doing is better than what they were doing internally, and that naturally leads to a lot of like interesting, warm conversations that require me to follow up. And like, that's my thing, is like, go to GDC, you want success, please message people and follow up. You won't, I don't, but you should. Don't do what I say. No, wait, do what I say, don't do what I do. That's what I would say.
Do as you say, not as you do. Got it. And you don't remember every single person?
I have a good face memory, but I definitely don't have the names. So, and I'm pretty good at remembering people's details. So, I'll never forget, I talked to a former coworker of mine, and I remembered his wife, his kids' names, where they currently lived, and a bunch of other things, and he was like, that was amazing. He's like, we hadn't talked in like 6 years. He was like, that's incredible. How'd you remember all those things? And I was like, I don't know. It's just how my brain is built. But yeah, you want to do face memories, but don't be afraid to just be like, hey man, I think we talked last year, it's cool, Like, it's cool if you remember me, that's fine. I don't, expect everyone to remember me. But yeah, you always treat everyone like warmly as if you've known them for a million years, and then you could just, if you have met them before, fantastic. You don't look like an idiot. If you haven't met them before, you leave a good impression.
Greg, for you, you're currently at a company, you're not trying to hustle for publishers. What is your goal when you go to GDC?
So I've kind of had, I'm gonna be a little philosophical here, cut me off at some point if you need to. I've had kind of a change in my desire for internal versus external, like, validation. And so back in October, I started a co-working group with sort of the idea that, like, people always say things like work harder, or work smarter, not harder, which is really just a different way of working harder. And that there's like a limit, right? Like you can't give more than 100%, and even that's probably not sustainable. But you can invest in things you care about. You can take the time to go and pursue things that are important to you. And when we talk about, like, is GDC worth it? GDC really just takes time and money, right? And my question is, if not GDC, then what else are you doing? Because if it's just go to GDC or don't go to GDC, then are you spending that time investing in your game development career or your game development connections? Because if that's something that you really care about, and I think for most of us it is, then that's a thing you should be spending time on. And if you can, probably spending money too. So I think for me, when I go to GDC, what I know is that I'm taking 5 to 7 days where I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna work on something that's really important to me. And whether or not I make a connection there, whether I find a job, whether whether that person remembers me, that's not really the most important thing. The most important thing is that I'm choosing myself and to invest in the things that I care about. And so if you're thinking about, is GDC worth it? Think about what you're investing your time and money into that isn't GDC if you're not going.
In a similar vein, is we talk about GDC as like this mecca of game development, and for a lot of folks it is kind of the one that they know about, is the place to be. But there's a lot of other places and spaces and conferences. I'm curious, if not GDC, where else? Like, what are other places that you frequent or that you think are worth visiting?
Soft pitch to each your own, Alex, right, with your favorite conferences.
Jared, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
You want to say DICE at the same time?
Yeah, it's DICE. That's the
Let's
answer.
do DICE, right? I mean, it's
DICE.
Las Vegas, which is like an amazing, insane fever dream of a place, but you are in the same room with, like, you'll be in a room and there will be an academic who did their PhD thesis on, the logical implications of toiletry, and then also there would be like the president of video games, and then also an engineer who created the bit, and all these people will weirdly be in the same room or in the same, I guess, hotel bar with each other. And this has always led to great conversations amongst folks of varying and various skill levels, and that includes me, and that includes Alex, and includes you if you're there.
I will say DICE is of a certain type of conference. It is not something I would recommend to everyone. So I want to be very clear, while I think that DICE has a higher ROI and a higher potential, and frankly I would much rather go to DICE over GDC, it is a terrible conference for some people to go to. And there's a reason why. DICE is hosted at 3 bars. That's it. I don't want to say that DICE doesn't have conference tracks and everything like that, but really it's hosted at 3 bars and 1 Starbucks. And so that's the Aria. And so you go to the Aria. Aria has 3 bars. There's one that you want to go to. There's another one near the entrance, and there's a third that's hidden behind, drapery, heavy drapery. And those 3 bars are where literally all the leadership and business teams of the video game industry circle around that area. If you don't like smoke, if you don't like loud noises, if you don't like walking up to randos, if you feel intimidated by someone saying, oh yeah, I'm the CTO of EA, then, it's a fantastic place to go to. If you're an introvert like my wife, it's hell. like absolute.
Dude, I'm an introvert. I think again, like, let's pat Boston on the back here. We've done a great job of bringing people together into environments where there's like a warm intro instead of just like, oh my God, I have to talk to people. And like Alex, you've done a huge amount around that. So, don't sell yourself.
Yeah, but I want to be clear that like I think GDC is broader. I think that's why GDC is where I still recommend. GDC is broader. It's where I see narrative designers go and feel amazing about their narrative design and meeting amazing narrative designers. It's where students can go and talk to professionals. It's where like engineers can go and get excited and talk about their indie project with the next person. DICE is not that conference.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, DICE is the conference that you go to because you want to network at a relatively high level and every single person around you is a founder, studio head, executive, has money, wishes they had money, or is just generally there for the vibes. And it's an amazing conference. But there's other ones out there too. I will say GameSpeak Next, I think gives me a high volume ROI. If you're a studio founder, it's a great place to go to. Pocket Gamer for mobile, Pocket Gamer London, I can't recommend highly enough. If you're in the mobile games industry, it's definitely the mecca for mobile games. And then there's a couple other smaller events, but I gotta be honest, the one I love the most is PAX East. That's still my favorite for the sheer reason that you just get hundreds of people coming by and being like, bro, you make video games? That's awesome. And that energizes me like nothing else. So I feel like it serves a different purpose, but there's nothing better for me in terms of conferences to get energized as PAX East. But I think other than GDC, for a certain type of person, DICE is actually a much higher ROI. And I'd argue a much better conference for me never having bought a ticket to DICE.
Connor, you go to a lot of interesting places, a lot of interesting conferences. What are some of the places that you like to go to find community?
I think that answer will definitely vary, but for anyone, but I think the way I think about it, the way I started, was thinking about my interests, the communities I'm a part of, my backgrounds, like professionally and culturally, it's with interests. So that's where I would start. So I think the first events I kind of heard of and were interested in too were there's the Black in Gaming group. So basically, it's like another nonprofit, and I volunteered with them for the past 2 years, and helped kind of organize their award show for the past 2 years before this year. I think that's still GDC though. Just say outside of GDC, but that event kind of got me into GDC and learning more about it. But outside of GDC, I think about art spaces, interactive spaces, and because Boston has a lot of tech, I look at whatever kind of emerging tech is around. So I'd say the most recently, there's some Boston Tech Week events, but I think the MIT Media Lab and then Swiss Next, which is like the Swiss consulate and the cultural and science consulate in Cambridge, has very interesting interdisciplinary events. So I think just adding yourself to mailing lists is a good way to get involved. And so those kind of smaller talk workshop events kind of lead to bigger things usually. So I don't know if I have like a specific event I would say, but I think you'll get a lot of value from thinking about what makes you unique, what makes your interest unique, and then finding those what events around those interests exist, and then that makes you a unique game developer, enriches your professional kind of personhood. But also I think it enriches the communities you end up entering.
Ray, did you have something?
Sure. So we're really spoiled in Boston. We get a lot of great things here, like GoodellCon, and also Game Loop, and also Handmade Boston, which is like a very technical, low-level programming focused conference here. There's like a lot of great local events, and I think that those are really valuable, and they're often like just on a weekend. The other thing I will say is if we're talking about spending money for networking, you can just buy a plane ticket somewhere. And so I actually, after GDC, always go down to Southern California, where I worked for a few years, and I literally fill the entire weekend after GDC with coffees and dinners with people I used to work with and people I know in the area. Like, you don't need a conference to connect with your people. You can just fly somewhere and see them and buy them dinner. So, recommend that too.
There's many academic conferences that I don't need to bore non-academics with, but if you're an academic, I'm happy to chat, or if you're interested in grad school, I'm happy to chat about academic side stuff. My favorite niche event that's practitioner friendly and academic friendly is Roguelike Celebration. Like, by a long shot, I love Roguelike Celebration.
Can you explain what is that?
So Roguelike Celebration is, they used to have an in-person. During COVID, they switched to online only. They designed an entire MUD that the event happens in, with like custom rooms and custom badges and custom everything. It's typically on a weekend in October, and it's all kinds of procedural generation and like things that are interesting to people who like procedural generation that's definitely not procedural generation but still really cool. Talks, some long, some short, and just a really, really nice online social space to be able to hang out in as well. Like, and I am not an online conference person. If you send me a link to your Zoom conference, I'll be like, cool, have a great time, because I will not. But like, I can hang out in it. You literally go to a room in the MUD and it brings up a link to the live stream in it, and you've got like MUD chat alongside the live stream link, and then you can like go somewhere else. It's super cool. I really, really love it.
Awesome. Before I turn it over to the audience for questions, I wanted everyone to give the one single most important piece of advice that they have for folks who want to go to GDC. And we'll start with Ichiro, based on his eyes.
Okay, so I mean, you heard it here, I'm gonna say it again. The biggest strength you have in Boston is your Bostonian network. There are a bunch of people who do the opposite of pulling the ladder up from behind them or under them, or whatever the proper proposition is. Talk to everybody on this panel, and if you go to GDC, be part of all of the online things, make things happen, and everybody will just know you. And you know, if you do the right things, you'll meet people who love the same things about game dev that you do, and like weirdly magical things happen.
All right, Connor, let's keep it remote.
Yeah, nice. So I have one piece of advice, but two things to say. So the one piece of advice would be to ask for help. People love giving unsolicited advice, so I think asking for that or soliciting it is a great way to take that, get that. So, but also, you know, I guess they say closed mouths don't get fed. I think asking for help is a great way to learn and be curious. The second thing is also, I wanted to shout out Jordan, who was our GDC partner, who might be in the audience, just if she's there. I also wanted to give her an opportunity to share and or just be part of the conversation if it makes sense. Just in case, like before, you know, we wrap up or anything. So that's what I have to say.
She is
You wanna
indeed
say anything?
I mean, sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm an event producer for GDC. Okay, cool. Hi. I was planning to just like be cool under the radar, just listen. But yeah, hi. I'm Jordan. I'm an event producer for GDC. I was part of the crew that worked with Connor and Chris to get Boston Game Dev there. And yeah, if anyone has any questions about GDC stuff, I'm happy to answer. I'm not a narc. I'm open to feedback and criticism, so I'm cool. And I guess the only other thing is we currently have our call for panels open till August 6th, and we have our call for community partners, which is how I got in touch with Boston Game Dev. That is open starting July 20th until September 18th.
Okay,
Also,
so plus one
thank
on
you
the
so
panel.
much for like this panel, because it's been fascinating.
There, look, you just gave everybody an opportunity to sort of create a little mini community and to be known and to share knowledge. I think do that.
Awesome. All right, Jillian.
I'm gonna repeat something that others have said so far, but I think it bears repeating, which is that networking is not the end, it's a process. I see so many young people, students, young professionals go to GDC thinking they'll get a job, thinking they'll get money, thinking they'll get whatever. and kind of going with like still student mindset in. And it's I get it, like it's really hard to make a name for yourself and put yourself out there. And I am also introverted and hate networking, and somehow I still do it professionally. But like it's almost freeing to go in with the mindset that you're just there to meet other cool people who do cool stuff. And the moment that it becomes transactional is the moment that you feel like shit, the person you're talking to feels like shit, and everything falls apart. And so really trying to go in with that, like, I am going to just be a human around some other humans who do cool stuff. And I love what I do and they love what they do. And try not to think about what it's going to get you in the end.
I've been thinking about this for the last like 10 minutes and I'm still struggling. I think if I had to give a piece of advice to my former self, right, to me when I started, it's that you can go into the schedule builder and find all the great talks, you can find all the great speakers, you can look and see where the good parties are and which ones are cheap and which ones are exclusive. I feel like a lot of my most important to my career and to my experience with games moments weren't on the schedule. They were when I decided not to go to that next talk that I was really excited about because I was having a really cool conversation with someone after. Or it's where I decided that I wasn't going to go to that party because I was going to get enough sleep, that I could follow up with everyone on LinkedIn the next morning who gave me a business card. So I think it's really valuable to plan, to look at what options there are, to schedule meetings. But I also think you should be really open to following your instincts and not being beholden to that schedule. You might just find the best part of GDC there.
So you don't want to stay in a super cheap hotel or motel. I've done that before.
Oh, God.
I know it sounds exciting and fun, but I've stayed in some real shitholes in San Francisco, and I don't recommend it.
I'm sorry. It sounded like being in a shithole sounds fun, but what do you mean by shithole?
I've stayed in 2 or 3 of the absolute worst motels in San Francisco. So I'm actually here to talk about housing in San Francisco. That's what I'm going to talk about. And in terms of where you want to stay, these guys have covered all the important things. We talk about the one most important thing, which is what hotel are you going to get? All right, because it can be really bad. So I'll just tell a quick story, which is at one point, this is the first and last time I let Kayla book a trip to San Francisco for us. Where Kayla was my co-founder at my last company. And she was like, it's a motel, it's super cheap. And I'm like, all right, what's super cheap? She's like, it's like $63 a night.
Oh no.
And I was like, yeah, that is pretty cheap. How good could it be? And so we show up, and I was like, ooh, I have a bathroom. And she was like, I don't. And I was like, how do you not have a bathroom? She was like, it doesn't, there's none. It's not here. And I was like, oh. And then she like messaged me in the morning. She was like, I can't use the facilities. They're not sanitary. And I was like, well, I have a bathroom that I think was clean. I looked around and I was like, this year, if you want to come in and use it? She was like, sure. And so, after that, I was like, well, I don't think there were any bed bugs in the bed. I don't know. I wasn't bit that I know of. There's a lot of these places in San Francisco. Don't stay at them. No, don't. It's not worth it. Another time I stayed in a room, it had one window and it opened into the hallway. So, that was not, I did not expect that. There were breezes as people walked by my bed, is what it was. The hotel room literally, it's actually one of my favorite hotels in San Francisco. But yeah, you gotta go in there with the right mindset, which is a bunch of gold miners used to stay there, and it hasn't been updated in 120 years. So, again, it's clawfoot tubs and everything. It's pretty cool. But there's no bathroom, and there was no outdoor window. It was just an indoor window, so you could hear everyone's business, and then you would be like, "Can you quiet down? I'm trying to sleep here." So.
Okay, how about indie hostel?
But I think that is so what I'm going to end with is, if you're considering, because I know a lot of people are like, it's expensive to go to San Francisco, I'm going to stay in my shithole, it's going to save a lot of money. Please don't. Instead, avail yourselves of all the amazing community options like the indie hostel that happen every year. Ways to not only save money, but to be part of a community right here, where you're not only near there, you also get a chance to stay with really cool people. They have tea every night and have a bunch of events that happen there. I can't recommend it enough. If you guys are hoping to save some money, please don't stay in dangerous locations like I have, and go stay with friends and indies. I think, Manny, you got something?
I am an attendee. I have a question here. What is the name of the indie hostel, like the official name? I know what it is, but.
What is the name of the, Manny, why don't you tell us what the name is of the.
Hi, man.
I was pretending to be attendee, but whatever. Was it Hi San Francisco?
Hosteling International. Hosteling International San Francisco. Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people love that. They can't recommend it enough.
Now you do need to plan a little earlier for that, right?
Yes.
You can't just show up there a week before and expect
Correct.
to get it.
So what you got, I guess that's another thing, let's talk briefly about this. It's probably gonna be asked already. You should be planning your trip to GDC in October to November of this year for next year. Because that's gonna be, you're gonna have the greatest options. If you can't do that, you find yourself close to the date, you can always call a hotel and say, has anything opened up? Because like a week before the event, you can go ahead, and we had some people this year who were able to switch to a much cheaper hotel the week prior to the event because those room blocks open up. But yeah, you typically, you should be thinking October, November this year to make your book plan.
Cool. I guess I'll close with my piece of advice, and we can take questions. And that is just that you can abandon GDC and take a nap on Wednesday, or any day for that matter, and charge and get ready to come back.
It's not illegal.
It is allowed, and no one will know. And now you do know that I do it, but.
Chad, how serious question, how do you avoid FOMO and do that?
There's enough that happens that week that I really don't get that sense of FOMO. A lot of people go out to lunch, so I'm not looking for a lunch nap. It's more of a midday thing, or I know something crazy isn't happening, so.
I think it's a good question though. It's like, how do you avoid FOMO? I think you just have to kind of let it slide by. You just got to be like, yeah, there's always a lot of things going on,
All right, if you would like to ask questions, maybe come on up somewhere so we can just hand the mic off. Does anyone have any questions?
Anyone has questions? On this side?
No question?
Okay, so I have to stand up there. That works much better.
Just one question that I had was that there feels like there's a little bit of a disconnect between people who are going for like the first time, or they're just like relatively young, and what people who they're usually asking about GDC, like what the advice is. Like you'll hear, at least I definitely hear like, oh, at GDC, but like don't even bother with the actual conference. It's all about the night events, or like like I found myself at a dinner with 8 CEOs or something, and it just feels like a little not realistic for someone who's going for the first time. So can you just talk a little bit about the difference between like the first time that you went, especially when you were earlier on in your career, and like how that transitioned to later times that you went, if that makes sense?
My first GDC, I got 400 and something business cards. I think I followed up with 3 of those people. I went to a lot of really loud parties and I screamed myself hoarse, and I didn't make a whole lot of connections. The next year I went and I hung out mostly with people from Boston who were there as well. A lot of like early Unity devs, and I'm still in touch with almost all of them. So I would say you're not aiming for quantity in connections.
So I am an introvert who's never gone to the loud screamy parties. I'm also afraid of them, like for safety reasons, very afraid of them. So my first GDC, I went to a lot of talks, and it bugs me that the advice is often to not go to talks, because the talks are really freaking cool. And people are sharing some really smart stuff, and you can ask a question if you want, and like they'll answer it, and that's awesome. I'm a nerd, and I always have been one, and I just like going and learning some stuff. And you meet the person who's sitting next to you in the talk. And like, I don't know, there's 20,000 people at GDC. The odds are you're going to be sitting next to kind of a cool person. And that cool person might be at the loud screamy bar at 11 o'clock at night, but I don't want to be at the loud screamy bar at 11 o'clock at night, so I'll meet them next to me at the talk as well. So I think that's perfectly reasonable. It also means I'm very rarely the person who suddenly finds myself around 8 CTOs or whatever. That's Ichiro's deal.
No, that sounds horrible. By the way, CEOs, like you can have cool CEOs. We're not talking about like what.
Zero's like, some CEOs are cool.
Anyway, yeah, like I think what's different about my first one versus now, like now I know a lot of people, and so when I go to GDC, I'm meeting some new people, but I'm also reconnecting with people who I already knew. Whereas my first few GDCs, I knew basically no one, and I just met the people who I now am reconnecting with when I go. Right?
When I first went, it was validating that I was a game developer. That was the main reason why I went. Felt like I was really there. I was a real boy. I was a real game developer. And that was, I think, what I got out of it. And I think that's very valuable by itself. To know that you are a professional and that you're working in a craft that you can get better at is super exciting and interesting. And I think that a lot of times we self-doubt ourselves when we go to these events. That self-doubt can either be reinforced because you feel like everyone's smarter than you. But for me, I was like, shit, I do this. I am a professional. I am a game developer. And I feel like so often we find ourselves by ourselves and we get in each other's heads, or get in our own heads, and it's nice to be around other people that validate that, like, no, you're doing the thing, you're doing the real thing, you are a professional, you are a game developer, you are doing something great. So my first GDC, the biggest benefit out of it wasn't the crazy parties or anything like that. It was actually sitting at a bar with a bunch of other people that did similar stuff to me, and I was like, oh, I'm not communicating as like a stupid newbie, I'm communicating as a peer. And that was a big difference. So I think meeting peers, but more importantly, viewing yourself as a peer is part of that growth process for you as a professional in the industry. And I think that for that reason alone, it's really important to go and hear that and go to these talks. Yeah, I do agree that a lot of times I come off where I'm like, bro, if you ain't partying with VCs, what you doing? You know? But the reality is, like, for most people, that the reason why I do that is because there's teams behind me that can go and do the thing and make video games and stuff like that. I'm literally the shield for a lot of those events so that I can take that stuff on and they can go learn and they can improve themselves and they can get better. And that to them, I think that's a super valuable GDC.
I just want to hop in real quick on something. You talked about like being a peer, and I think one of the things I would also say is if you're a student and you're making games as a student, and you're not getting paid for it, that's okay. You're still making games. You are still one of our peers, okay? So just because you're not getting paid the big bucks for it by EA or something like that doesn't mean that you're not part of this community.
I would say the biggest lesson that sorry, you go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. Yeah, I just wanted to say something because I think since I'm the youngest one and Gen Z, I feel like because I've been to talks that were hit or miss and then events that were hit or miss, and I think for me, I think what worked was going to places that maybe I was the most afraid of or had the most doubt about to kind of or confront that fear or just see it. So I think just like a lot of that just means just experimenting and doing a little bit of everything in your first times. And I think you mentioned mentors, but like finding maybe someone you've only ever met virtually, and then if they're there, meeting them in person, really building that relationship. And I think that can help provide more context than like since if you haven't been very often, because I think there's nothing really can replace lived experience. But I think the closest thing that can is maybe that kind of mentorship piece and that kind of guidance or just being in places that make you afraid.
So I love that. That's like, zone of proximal development when you're not, I assume you don't mean like Alex Engel's murder hotel.
Yeah, not
But
hate crime.
you learn a lot.
A room of you're like, oh my gosh, these designers are amazing. I am so like intimidated. And then they start talking to you like, you're like, oh my God, what is your cool idea that you're working on? They turn out to be humans.
Can we follow up on that? Like, I think that is one of the things I love about the game industry, and I think as a newbie, it's very hard to remember is that like everyone's just a person, And like, one of the things we're really terrible about as an industry is like assessing success and knowing whether our project's gonna be like the next big thing. And I think that as a result, a lot of game developers are like super humble, and I think that GDC is super valuable for that too. You're like, what'd you work on? They're like, oh yeah, like my last big project was like Red Dead Redemption 2, you know, and before that I was working at League of Legends. And you're like, oh, I guess those are big games. And then, you know, you're talking to them and you're like, what do you do? They're like, oh, I like bird watching, and like I do a lot of other things. And you're like, you're a real person? That's cool. I'm a real person too. And then you can like, I think that, again, that's great for confidence, because when you're new, you're like, oh, these people are untouchable. It's like, no, they're just people. They're just people. And that's great. It's super liberating.
All right, does anyone have any other questions?
Pass the mic around.
First off, I've never been to GDC. However, there was a couple of years ago where I did try and submit my indie game that I was working on for Independent Games Fest, if any of you have ever heard of it. So, just a bit of a background of what I've been doing to try and get to GDC is I have tried to submit that game that I've been working on for GDC's Independent Games Festival, which also made it harder and challenging considering that I took a trip to Japan around at that time. So anyway, since that might have been my first time going to GDC, and I didn't really get submitted for that game, so my game didn't get accepted. However, would it be a good idea to go to GDC for the first time where you submit a game for Independent Games Fest, or like submit for anything, or just go to GDC for the first time just to explore the expo hall before, like, you know, submitting your game for Independent Games Festival or anything like that?
I think it's a good question. So, you know, just you have to have a game in IGF in order to do that. Now, I've judged IGF, I've juried the Nuovo selection, and holy cow, the number of games that we get every year is increasing. Like, I think it was, you know, it broke 150 one year, and then bam, up to 700 or whatever last year was. It's great to submit for a handful of reasons. One, sometimes, I forget if they give feedback, but, you know, like getting something done and being able to say, hey, I submitted to something, but like there's a super slim minority of games that actually get in. So if I'm understanding the question, it's okay to do that, and then don't let that stop you, because you have this great game that you put together that you bring to GDC and you talk to all of the other developers about, and they tell you what they love and what they want, you know, what they would change about it, and that's valuable.
I think we have time like 2 more questions.
Hello. Quick question. So, I went to GDC the past year for the first time. It's amazing. Highly recommend it to everybody. And I made some connections with people, and I reached out afterwards, a couple weeks after GDC, to those connections. Had a few back and forths. What are some ways to kind of maintain those connections with people? Like, I'm a shy person. I don't want to just be like, hey, how you been, stranger? Because that just feels weird, you know? I don't want to be creepy. Like, what are some ways that you found are good ways to stay connected with people within the industry that you really enjoyed talking to?
I will just quickly, my quick answer is you should always ask some questions for feedback. People love unsolicited advice, but it's even better when you help someone. So if you have things that you're struggling with, or things you have questions about, or things you just want to like gauge, one of the great ways to re-engage with someone that you met before was like, hey man, like I've got a demo up. Could I get a chance for you to check out a demo? Or if you're talking to them more regularly, like, hey, I got a question about a game mechanic. I know you're a tech artist. Like, I'm trying to get this cool animation to trigger. Like, I don't know what, like I hate Niagara and Unreal. And so I'm like, sometimes just to reconnect with people, I'll be like, do you know how to use this Niagara function? And they're like, yeah, children know how to do that. And I'm like, talk to me like I'm a small child. That's what I need for particle effects. And so like those kind of interactions are really beneficial, where it's not just like, hey, I want to keep this open because maybe something happens in the future. You're like, hey man, like we're equals, we're peers. You know, I just have a question. You're a professional, I'm a professional. How do I do the thing? And then I found that those kind of interactions can be super valuable because then it's a two-way street. They feel like they can ask you too. Like the areas that you're an expert in that, you know, they're not an expert in, you get this great kind of back and forth. And those are great relationships, I think, when you can have them founded on like mutual learning and respect. And so I think you have a demo, you have a game, you have anything, Steam page you want to check out, new assets that you built. Instead of just saying, hey, check out my cool thing, being like, hey, what do you think? Professionally, did I succeed in this? Did I not succeed in this? Can you give me some critique? I think that it's a great way to keep people connected.
There's nothing like a captive audience. And all the CAs are standing outside of talks checking people's badges, and they actually really want to meet a bunch of other game developers, and they have to stand outside of these rooms. If you want to try to like meet people and practice that skill, they are so happy for you to come up and talk to them and ask them about how they're doing with the show and what they like. So that's sort of easy mode.
I'm also a shy person, and I mean, authentic connection is what works the best, right? So if there's some other event that you're going to, reach out and be like, oh, hey, I'm gonna be at X, are you gonna go? Do you know anyone who's gonna go? Like, I don't know anyone who's gonna be there. Do you know anyone who's gonna be there? Right? Like, these are things that are real, right? I also sometimes kind of like let it lie fallow for a little bit until I've got a reason to reach back out, right? Because people have a better memory than I think we think they do. Like, it's okay to kind of like connect a couple times and then maybe we're not going to be in touch for 8 months, 10 months. And then it's, oh, are you going to be at GDC this year? No, oh, what are you going to be at, right? And kind of keep it going that way.
Sure, how many book clubs and discords do you need to invite someone to right after GDC?
All of them. I mean, so along those lines, I do love to pester people with cool stuff that I'm working on that actually could give back to them. So I'll give you a mercenary tip that I don't follow as well as I should be. There was this politician, Farley, who I forget his first name, but used to have something called the Farley file where he wrote, like, I met somebody, and it's a Rolodex, it's an old trick. You know, you meet somebody, you write everything down that you know about them and what they're interested in, what they're working on, and then later on, you know, you go back and you're like, you know, it's been 2 months since I did GDC. What is everybody working on? Oh my gosh, I'm doing something exactly with, you know, person number 5 that I met here, and then person number 7. And then you tell them what you're working on, and, you know, hey, like Alex says, can you ask for information? But also, hey, we're doing a book club on, I don't know, what did we do the book club on most recently, Chad? Were you part of the last one?
I don't think I was on the last one.
Okay, so the mom test, which is how, you know, essentially how to get testing without biasing the person that you're asking. Hey, you know, like you were doing a bunch of product stuff. Do you want to be part of this book club? You want to read this book? And it can be great, as Jillian said, even like 8 months afterwards, reconnection with a purpose to help them. So all the book clubs, yes.
I think we have time for one singular last question.
Mine is actually just going to be a repeat of that.
Does anyone have another question? A final question.
Or you go.
Let's see, Lauren.
Hi, so this is another sort of keeping in touch question, I suppose, but you all are like fairly active members of the local game dev community. You're either organizers or just like you're showing up at a lot of these events and you're keeping in touch with a lot of people. How do you balance like maintaining this community here and your lives and just your regular friends and family, and also separately keeping up with all of these connections from who knows where, like all over the country, all over the world, you know, and just keeping track of it all?
I might have an answer.
Yeah, what you got, Connor?
Yeah, I think for me, one is just that I don't have a family or kids, so I think I have more time now. But and also in Liberty or locally, so sometimes getting to places like the picnic is a little easier. But on a maybe more relatable level, I think what I really think about relationships as are kind of like a series of ebb and flows. So I think how I describe it is that sometimes I feel like I'm a lot more of a producer, so I have a lot of energy to give and share, do that, and then other times I'm just like, no, I don't want to like contribute. I'm here to listen and I'm here to support, and so that's how I kind of think about it. So I think in that producer phase, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I post more on LinkedIn, and then other times it's like maybe I just consume more, see where I can make connections with other people. So I think that helps me manage my energy, or I guess you could say chi. Yeah.
How about, like I feel as though I should do LinkedIn more than I do, but I really don't love it. So maybe it's okay, like to do it or to not do it. I love just talking to people on the Boston Slack. It feels like no effort. And since, my team is distributed, it's not like I'm talking to them all the time. So, popping in and doing that is great. I like one-to-many communities where it's not, you can talk about a topic, or you can talk in a channel and at a person and say, hey, this is a topic that you and I were talking about, and then other people chime in, and that's lovely. And then you could just leave, right? After, throw in that bomb about how puzzle platformers are the greatest form of thing that you're gonna do and make $1 bazillion, which you can, incidentally. But like, I think if you're feeling like socializing and talking to people is in a particular way is an obligation, then it's possible that it's a muscle that you need to exercise, but it's also possible that you try it and it's just not your thing, and you do it other ways. Maybe you do one-to-one emails, or maybe you only do, in person or whatever, and that's okay too.
I feel like one of the things that I've most reached out to people about, unfortunately, the last couple of years is when layoffs happen, and it's my chance to go and look on LinkedIn for who do I know who's currently there. I may not have kept up with them for 5 years, but now I find out that they are there, or they've just left there, and it's an opportunity to just reach out to someone and say, hey, how are you doing? And I think that's really valuable to a lot of people. And so I'm not keeping up with everybody all the time, but when moments happen, especially within the game space, that bring my attention to it, I try to make sure to seize that energy of okay, Xbox just laid off a ton of people. Obsidian, right? Studio I used to work at just laid off people. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna reach out to all of them. And some of those will turn into, yeah, it's not good, and that's it. Some will turn into more important conversations, but people actually care a lot also when you show up for them when they're going through hard things.
Kind of Chiro's visage.
So I would say so I do have a partner and 2 kids, and I'm at a phase of my life where I've fully accepted that I cannot have it all, and that's okay. There's a beauty to actually not having it all, and there's time where I focus on my family, and there's time where I focus on work, and there's time where my friends are people I work with, and then it's kind of like a twofer. But I think maybe it's related to the FOMO question from earlier, right? Once you accept that you can't do it all, and you let go of that, it gets easier, I guess. And before I had kids, I was super active on social media, and that's how I did everything. And then I had kids, and I'm like, God, there's many things I want to be doing with my life that are not reading Twitter. So many. So yeah, I give where I can and take where I can, and I like Idra. I love posting in the Boston Game Dev Slack. A couple channels in there, I'm kind of active in the parenting channel, because that's the phase of life I'm in right now. And it's just kind of a way to stay in touch, and I don't know, my kids will get older at some point, and then I'm sure I'll have more time to do lots of evening events, but this is my one evening event of the summer, so hello, it's lovely to see you all. And then I will go hide again.
I guess I'll finish off, but one thing that's really important is to show up and be there, be present. Most of your friends are not forever friends, and that's okay. And it's actually totally okay for you to make meaningful connections that last for weeks, months, years, and then go dormant. What matters is the genuineness of those connections. So when you see someone for the next time, 5, 10, 15 years later, they don't only remember you, but they feel like they want to reconnect. And I have a best friend of mine that I saw for the first time in 7 years this last year, or earlier this year. And he was like, oh, I'm married, I have all this other stuff, we live in San Diego. And I only had 4 hours to connect with him and his wife, and the four of us, me and my wife and the two of them. And like, what mattered was being present, not the FOMO of like, oh my God, I could have been in this person's life for like the last 6 years and I wasn't, but that we were there for each other at that time. And like, you know, I have very close friends that I was close friends with for like 10, 12, 15 years that I now am not in contact with, but that doesn't mean I'm not gonna be in contact with them in the future. So like, leave those doors open, but focus on who's here now is I think one of the easiest things. Who am I talking to now? Who am I engaging with now? I'm gonna engage genuinely with them. And I'm not gonna worry about all the people that I'm not talking to. But I will say COVID taught me one thing, which is that you really need to tell people how much they mean to you, and you need to reach out, because during COVID in particular, I think there's a couple of my friends where, you know, they came back to me later on, they were like, the fact that you reached out at all was really meaningful during a time of great isolation. And so I think that like reaching out occasionally, to Greg's point, just being like, hey, I'm alive, I hope you're alive, hope you're good. You know, I'd love to reconnect at some point if you're in the area. If not, no big deal. You know, but just being present today, and same thing with like at GDC, to bring it all the way back full circle, you are at the events that you are at any given time. There's 1,000 other things going on at GDC that you could be part of. What matters is that the one that you're at now is the one that you're trying to make genuine connections at. And I don't care if that's sitting on your appointed garden, sharing a hot dog with someone, or if it's like going out to an Andreessen Horowitz party with 8,000 of your new friends. Like, these are events that you're at. You can't let FOMO rule you. You just gotta keep doing it. You gotta be present for the people that are there, and then those people will show up for you later on in your life. And then hopefully you get to work with them.
I'm sorry, I have to double down on the whole sharing a hot dog with. Is pretty. You mean one hot dog or multiple hot dogs?
we actually split it down the middle, and each
Like
one of us,
lengthwise,
like lengthwise, and each one of us has one half.
But how do you do the bun?
Perfect.
The bun gets split in half too. You go down the middle, so like it's like, yeah, you like
Yeah, we're all
it,
game
and then
designers. We
you
know
split the hot dog.
This is like where are the pants on the horse?
No, this is right. Keep going. If you haven't eaten a hot dog split right down the center, then you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing.
Fair enough, I don't know what I'm
Forget GDC. That's what it's all
I
about.
think more importantly, we're curious about how hamburgers work now.
Well, actually, one person
Like-
just eats
like
the top,
through the-
and the other person eats the bottom. That's what it is.
Awesome. Well, speaking of food,
I like how Jillian's like, you don't really do this, do you? Like, this is,
Sweet, I need to
you
know.
don't want to hang out with Alex anymore. He's eating hot dogs, wrong.
segueing our food and socializing question, thank you all for coming. We have Flat Top Johnny's afterwards that people are gonna go to.
Let's do it.
Great place to go make genuine connections with anyone you did not talk to yet here.
Oh, quick thing.
You were gonna say it was a great place to have a top half of a hot dog.
I want to figure out half of the hamburger.
They sell hot dogs.
You think you could ask them for it like that?
For sure.
If you ask the staff at Flat Top Johnny, you cut your hot dog in half, they will spit on it.
You give them a 20, and then you would say 2.
If you give them a 20, they're gonna take your 20 and spit on it.
Yeah, don't do that. So here's some information for you guys. If you're not on the BPM Discord, please join the Discord with this QR code. I hope this works. If it doesn't, please let me know. And send us an email. The reason why I'm putting this up here is also because, as a reminder, we are looking for organizers that we'd like to add to the board. Alyssa?
I just wanted to add a few things.
Okay.
Thank you guys for the talk. Can we give a hand to our speakers?